Hi there. My name is Rick Ragosa, and we've got another session here with Community 10, a series that we call Mastering the Guitar. In the first session that we had, basically we've been laying out a format of posture, the importance of holding your hands in a certain fashion that allows you to have freedom of access to the fretboard as well as freedom of movement over the strings, whether it be using a pick or with your fingers. And as this series unfolds, we're going to get into more of the aspects and the approaches of how to make certain sounds and to acquire the skills and to achieve the goals that you want to set. At this stage, I'd like to just focus on the importance of what is going on when you're playing the instrument. And I found over the last 17, 18 years that I've been involved in instruction that this is an important factor in playing the guitar, because anybody can pick up this instrument and hit the strings and press and make sounds. But for the student, keeping in mind that we want to lay a foundation for further advancement, it's important to really understand what's going on with the instrument. And this takes away all the mysteries of why you do certain things when you do them and what you're going to achieve from the outcome of this. The important thing to think about right now is you have two arms, a left and right hand. Now in the first session we looked at a basic exercise number 1. And I'd like to go over it again and get into it a little bit more deeper. Basically, we're dealing with position playing, which means whatever fret on the guitar that your first finger is in line with, that's the position you're in. If you're in line with the 5th fret, then we're dealing with the 5th position. And it just works correspondingly like that. So it makes it easier to catalog different scales and positions, like when you say, okay, let's go to the 7th position, you know what I'm talking about and you know what to do, instead of counting out each fret each time and going, okay, go here, or, okay, so it's just terms that it's standard information dealing with players. So for here, let's go back, we started in the 3rd position. And what we want to do here is fashion your hand very similar to how you would be. The analogy I've used over the years is reaching for something like a banana, or any of those kind of silly analogies you can have, that your thumb and the tips of the fingers work together to grasp the object. Well, this is the type of natural motion that we want to use, keeping our motion as natural as possible and applying it to the guitar. So take that natural motion and put the neck in between it. The thumb should sit somewhere in the middle of the neck, as well as the fingers should be slightly curved and allowing them to have free access over the fretboard, covering all 6 strings. A certain point that you can consider from where you're sitting and how you're holding your instrument is when I look down, it's in line with the base of the knuckles. And that's important because you want the fingers to have freedom of access from the top of the plane of the neck. Coming around from the back limits and restricts us, okay? The motion, if we wanted to immediately do a lick and a phrase or a chord that starts on the top string, we'd have to take ourselves out of that basic position and make some adjustments. Now if you've got a lot of time and you're not playing with anybody and there's really a freedom of motion that you can just do whatever you want, well, that could be fine. But if you're playing with somebody and you've got fast runs and you've got licks that have got to come out, you want to limit as much excess motion as possible. And trust me, I've been there where you don't have a lot of time to think. And so to develop a pattern of behavior or a process of thinking, is how I refer to it as, is very important in the learning stages. Once you establish a solid foundation, you develop that as time goes on. And the whole purpose and point of this is that you can achieve the goals that you set out, as opposed to sitting in a room and hoping after 20 years it will happen. You can be specific and deliberate with your motion, And you'll notice that if you follow a certain pattern and program, in 6 months, you'll be quite amazed at how much information that not only can you digest, but be able to interpret and express on the instrument. And that's what these drills and the overall approach of playing the guitar that I've acquired over the years, and the years of study that I've been involved in, is trying to achieve the most with the least amount of effort, but making the most of your time, minimum waste of motion. Okay, so we want to apply those things, and I'll be referring to them quite a lot over the next how many episodes and series we're going to get involved in. So let's go back to the third position and sort of have a look again at what you should expect and what you can look at and what you should recognize from just a basic proper left-hand position. The first thing I'd like you to try to do is place each finger down on one string. And it's very important for you to be able to have your 4 fingers, in fact, on any given string, without too much of an awkward feeling, without having to change your elbow. The whole concept of changing your position each time you move to a string it's ridiculous. There's no need for it. It's not necessary. So what you want to look for is minimum movement, so that when you can touch the first string, one of the guidelines I use is by touching the first string and the 6th string, there's really no need for my hand to move. All the action is right there. I don't have to switch not only the pivot part of the thumb, but it also is referred to as a guide finger or a guide digit if you're not into the thumb being a finger. And the important thing is that it keeps your hand in position, and it also acts as a kind of stabilizer, because you will be pressing in with the tips of the fingers. And so you're pressing into the guitar, and there's a slight pressure with the thumb as well, so that you've got a type of pinching. And this is another term that I use quite frequently, and it's very important to focus on as you apply it to your playing, and it's tension and release cycles. And it's important that you have that in the foremost of your thinking, because a lot of players overemphasize the motion needlessly and waste a lot of energy, and it restricts themselves. They try to go fast, and you just can't. There's a waste of energy. So what my approach is to minimize the motion, minimize waste of motion, and really make the most of what you're doing here. So going back to the 4 fingers being in line on the first string, okay, it's important to be able to just take each finger on and off a few times without any excess motion with the other fingers, slow freedom. And I know a few of you are rushing out right now, but not to worry. If you're just beginning, it's probably the best place for you to be, because you can start fresh and acquire positive positioning and positive habits from the beginning. Those of you who have played for a while, you might really seriously consider maybe revamping your posture. And this is again a choice that I used to be a little bit more stringent on, but now it purely is up to you. If your goal is to play this instrument and play it well and eliminate the factors that block up emotional expression, then it's important to take this advice seriously. If you're a casual player and it really doesn't matter, well, just pay attention to the series, and there'll be certain things that will help you in your strumming and certain information dealing with chords. There'll be something for you, but you take it as seriously as you want, okay? The important thing is it's a freedom of choice. So back to the first finger, what's a sort of a warm-up drill you can do before you include the right hand on the actual basic exercise is being able to walk 1, 2, 3, 4, and then move to the next string 1 finger at a time without any excess motion, being deliberate, okay? And it's important now because music is rhythmic. It deals with frameworks of rhythm and time base. So it's important that to some degree you adhere to a type of a quantized rhythm, some kind of regular pattern, because our goal through all of this is to play the instrument. And if you think about it, whatever you'd be doing, whether it be lead lines or chords for rhythm, is going to have to follow a type of time frame, okay? And so it's important to start training your body to respond to time frame. 3/4 time, 4/4 time, whatever it is, to be slow and rhythmic, and eventually by that positive, just basic programming, okay, articulate memory picks up on that, and when it comes time to play, you just naturally feel rhythmic. It's not a sporadic thing where you're rushing out here and then all of a sudden you got all this time in your hands. Music can be just relaxed, and whatever the riff is that you're playing, which I will show you in later episodes, you don't have to stress out at it. It can be controlled and deliberate motion, and basically what happens is it transcends the technical aspect and turns into art. That's our goal here, to be able to play music so that it sounds good, and not only you'll be able to impress your friends, but even yourself. You're tapping in onto this thing, music, whatever it is, however you want to define it. There's a part of all this that in the end our goal is to play music, okay? And my focus has been over my whole playing career and my whole playing is, again, to try to be as accurate as possible and to try to achieve as much as possible in the time that I have. And I found that paying attention to tension and release cycles, making sure that I'm watching the pressure, tension, and release has been the key to really advancing on this instrument. And I'll be able to show you some of the things that I've been able to achieve through this process of thinking. Now let's include the right hand in on this. I'm going to assume at first here and recommend that you try using a pick, because it isolates all the muscles in the hand and the fingers down to one little area, plectrum playing, which is the tip of the pick. With the right hand, you want to just have it naturally rest over the guitar and rest holding the pick between the index finger and the thumb and keeping the other fingers tucked in. You want to just have a natural motion. We want to try to adhere to as much of a natural flow as possible. The guitar shouldn't be an awkward thing. It shouldn't be something that you have to struggle with or fight with. It's an instrument and it's a device as a means of expression. And that's what we want to do, eliminate the things that keep us from expressing ourselves on this instrument. So when we can involve both hands, we get something like this. Now this is what I call the basic exercise number 1. And I'm going to complete it with each finger on each of the strings on how I've been playing it for years and years and years and years, and how I've recommended and have been helpful to others who've acquired this drill. And it becomes an excellent warm-up, and it actually involves every aspect of playing, from the dexterity part of moving your fingers to stamina, being able to exercise tension and release cycles, as well as getting your overall chops. There's a concept in drumming, they call it a flam, and it's when you hit the snare slightly off of the other this basic downbeat and the other stick, so you get a type of stretching that count. Well, in guitar, we want to get away from a flam. To be able to strike the string and apply tension and release cycles at the same time is our goal. Striking it and then applying tension release is basically considered off. And so what we want to do is coordinate both members to work simultaneously. Okay? So at first, you'll find yourself under the learning phrase breaking each part down. Okay? We've generally just had a look at the first position, and we'll be going through this. I'm just skimming over basic points, and as we develop a little bit more complexity, you'll see where we're going with this and what are the reasons. As far as positive practice habits, for this, for example, this time, just focus on the right hand for a moment, holding the pick over the string. Now there's two forms of strokes. There's a down stroke, where you press down, and then the opposite of down is up, the upstroke. Okay? So naturally what you want to try to do is be able to play a down and up stroke on each string. Okay? And the important thing here is don't worry about rushing. The more you focus on proper posture and proper technique, the sooner you'll be playing and the sooner you'll be making the sounds that we all hear and want to play when, you know, we become aspiring players or be aspiring young guitar players. So the important thing is go slow and treat it as a drill. You want to be able to just be able to naturally strike the string down and up. And another guideline that I've used over the years is that if you can't do this comfortably, forget about the Eddie Van Halen solos, because it just requires that much more discipline and being in tune with your instrument. So it's important that you go slow and get used to the motion that you're going to be doing this motion for the rest of your life. As far as being a player, this is what it takes to strum the right hand in the small area of 6 strings. So this is the motion. The sooner you get used to that, and the sooner that you get in tune with that area of playing, the sooner you can get on to being selective and playing riffs and chords and whatever you actually want to play, whether it be country, jazz, rock, blues, heavy metal. It doesn't really matter, actually. The technique, the underlying principles and the techniques are all the same for all styles. In the end, I'll be able to, in a few episodes down the road, I'll show you how it's simply a matter of choice of notes in relation to each other that give you the various voicings and phrasings that make jazz sound like jazz and country sound like country. A C scale, for example, the C scale is the same whether it's jazz, rock, blues, or country, whatever it is, okay? It's all the same. So it's by choosing certain notes that give you a jazz sound or a rock sound or a country sound. So it's important now at this phase of the game that we get our hands ready for that information. And that's what doing technical exercises is all about. Preparing the hands, getting the strength built up, the stamina, and this way when it comes time to actually learning data, when I first got introduced into the teaching aspect of music and guitar, it was so frustrating because the students wouldn't do their homework or they weren't physically capable of the drills and even holding chords. So I found myself having to reach over and actually, okay, now put your finger here, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And that practice is still being done today. There's a lot of people taking lessons from people who know how to play but don't or are not qualified in communicating that. And so it's important that we develop a minimal amount of dexterity so that that part is not going to be a frustrating factor. Because believe me, when you're learning how to play something and you've got to worry about your posture and all these other things and all these things are on your mind, it makes it very frustrating. So it's important to take this seriously. And you'll find that over a few weeks, even just in a few weeks, in fact it takes approximately 6 weeks before a basic mechanical pattern becomes a part of your articulate memory. So if you're diligent with these things, it doesn't take too long. Like how many of you now remind yourself how to walk? It becomes a natural part of your expression. And it's those principles that we want to apply because guitar playing is no different. Once we instill certain motions in our mechanisms, well, they just naturally then will reproduce that every time you call upon them. Which brings us to the important part of learning this instrument, which is the focus of these sessions, is that your hands don't know what the proper positioning is. So it's important that you pay attention to what your hands are doing, because regardless whether you are or not, your body's going to remember what you're doing. And unfortunately, habit's easier to program first time around than to try to change. Okay? So I'm just giving you and offering advice, recommended advice, that take the first part of your learning seriously, because once you get past this phase of learning where you're comfortable with positions then and being able to play certain chords and a little bit, it changes your whole aspect of movement. Music then becomes a little bit more fun and less frustrating, okay? And I've went through that whole, literally suicidal words. How can I get these licks? How can I get my fingers to move faster? How can I just do what that guy's doing? And Eddie Van Halen, I've mentioned him a few times. There's a number of people, Yngwie Malmsteen, there's a number of players who are exceptional players. And if you read what they teach, and there's a few courses out, quite a few courses out, and now with the computer websites, these gentlemen sat for hours and hours in their hotel room doing basic drills, getting in tune with basic positioning, and from that, once you get your homework done, artistic expression is just that. It's an expression. It isn't a stressful, struggling thing. It's just a freedom of expression thing. So, going back to the drill, let's combine both hands together so you can hear and see what it sounds like. This is basic exercise number 1. We get the first hand in third position. The other fingers are ready for their assignments, okay? The first finger gets ready. We're going to go slow and break the motions down. You apply tension, you strike, and you release, stopping the sound. But notice I didn't take my finger off. In this learning phase, what we're trying to do is program our body and educate our body to memorize and put in its memory banks the amount of inertia that was needed, the amount of energy, tension, and release. And you see, I don't need any more than that. And how to find out what minimum movement is if you touch the string and get what I call the tunk sound, tunk, 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 and apply light pressure on the string until you hear the sound. And you'll find that it's very minimal, okay? And this is the type, those amount of neurons being sent along the neurological system causing those muscles to respond is very minimal, and that's what we want to focus on. You want to, be in tune with your system. There's no sense of just torquing out and pressing harder than you have to. You want to just light pressure, okay? Okay, so from there, here we go. Attention and release. Then we apply the second finger. Tension and release. Then the third finger. Then the fourth finger. Okay, now we leave them on as guide fingers. Then from here, the next finger goes up to the second string, and we strike it. Then the next finger comes up. Notice that the other fingers, there's no need for them to move, unless they're assigned to move. We're in learning stage, and your body's picking up what you're doing. So we want to train them not to be sporadic and have a mind of their own, but to be available to do what they're told, okay? And you'll find that it's not an easy thing. And doing these basic drills has also been quite an eye-opener for a lot of people who didn't really know what was all involved in playing, and kind of tunes you in to appreciate when someone can play well, exactly what has gone into them being able to do just that. And the fourth finger. And we move one string at a time. Tension and release. And there's really no need to move the left hand. The posture's basically stable. Thumb acts as a guide finger. All the way up to the top string. Okay, now relax the hand. You'll find that that's a full workout. Being able to play 1, 2, 3, 4, and each of the strings, okay, is just an excellent workout. I used to have a 2-hour warm-up routine when I would go through first position, up and down, then I'd go to the second position, and I would go all the way up and down the neck until up here. Some guitars have 24 frets, some have 17, all the way up, and then I'd go all the way back down again. And then I would switch over and do my drills upside down. And in fact, the thing is, if you really look at it, the fingers are attacking the neck in the same way. And just up and down, with the goal in mind that I'm getting used to the playing area that I'm going to be playing in, but I'm also training the hands to be comfortable in the perimeters of this. And it should be a natural thing, and that is our goal. Just to be more or less, you want to have control, all right? And you want to be able to respond, and you want to limit